So now that you're saying that we've got these simple volumes illustrated out, next step is we're going to paint them, right? Now what I've done here is I've combined all of these onto its own layer here, right? Um, and there's nothing else on the layer, meaning there's no backgrounds or anything. It's actually transparent, as you can see here. Um, you may want to actually come back and fill in any little gaps that you may see here, like that right there. Just try to make it a little bit more clean and presentable, like this. But for the most part, this is really about painting light on form, very much like those still lifes. So I cleaned it up. Let me put that background in there again. And I'm just going to make this background kind of maybe this lighter gray color. You don't ever want to, have a background that's completely white or completely black. Kind of want to, remain within certain values. And because, yeah, you can't go brighter than white and you can't go darker than black, right? Um, all right, so what I'm gonna do here is I've got this new layer that I just created. I'm gonna hold down Alt, and you can see I can now use this bottom layer here, this fella, um, as a clipping mask, right? And what that means is I can paint over the top of this. Let me just use a color. You can paint over it, and it stays within the mask of this. This technique is used for a lot of concept art as well as matte painting. It is the best way I found over the years for me to have control over like painting within the lines and keeping control with the shape and silhouette of an object. And also it's generally like faster so that you don't have to worry about cleaning up the outside bits, just the inside bits, right? So here what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to find like a nice soft brush that I can use. Um, and yeah, probably this soft round brush is probably best for that. Notice I'm not using crazy brushes yet because I'm just trying to paint in, simple volumes and such. So I'm gonna pick this color here and maybe make it like a step brighter than what's in the background. And so let's talk about that 3-point lighting setup that we talked about at the beginning, right? Um, let me see if we still have it here. 3-point lighting. 3-point lighting. We've got our camera, which is already established, seeing our character, but there'd be a key light maybe from the front right hand side or the front left hand side, and generally it points downward on our main subject. You're trying to get sort of like here's the main light, for example. You could see over here is sort of the rim or the backlight, and then down here it's currently black, but then you come to here and there's a bit of a bounce that kind of fill lights in the bottom of this guy's chin. So there's that. So let's just pick an arbitrary point of where our first light goes, our main light, and I'm just gonna paint in the main light like it's up here, like so. You can see how fast you can do this. Now you can see here, this sphere is overlapping that one, right? So I'm gonna use the lasso tool now and lasso out. I'm gonna lasso out that sphere that's in front. Okay. And then just gonna paint in. And I'm not really considering in the cast shadows quite yet. I'm currently just mainly thinking about the main light. Now this is tricky, right? Because we've got a little bit of a overlap, but you can see it'll be right like that. And then of course our lasso of this cylinder. Like that. And all this is on a separate layer, which means I can always mess around with it like later. Say for example, if these examples are too bright, I could always lower the opacity on them later and kind of fix it in post. But yeah, here you go. There's some light. Maybe lower down my opacity to like 50%, so you hit 5. I'm just gonna felt like that was maybe too intense. And then here we've got this cylinder in the distance, like that. Now with these cylinders, you gotta kind of go twice, right? You've got the top plane here, and this is kind of a more even feel across, and maybe the front is a little brighter than the back, like that. And then we'll grab what we called it's sort of a lopped off cone, right? Like that. It's like we're turning our design character back into like a artist mannequin. And the reason why is because I really want to stress the simple forms first, because if you come in and you just start rendering out the details, first off, it's going to take you forever. And then secondly, it's almost like you'd be too close in on one part and not seeing how the light affects it as a whole, right? And so, like, this way I can kind of see how all the stuff is being affected all at once, right? In fact, like over here, I noticed that I already have like a little bit of bleed over, but that's okay. We'll go in with like a dark pass later. And grab this. Like that, and then I'll reduce my brush and then do another swipe. Gonna make this top one kind of a medium, and I'm gonna make this side corner one here 2 swipes. 1, 2. Like that. It's gonna... It's almost too similar in value, isn't it? So this needs to be maybe brighter than the top value. Gonna do this part here. Oh, although that sphere is gonna overlap, so I'm just gonna cut that off right here. I do like a wide sweep first, and then I just keep reducing the brush until... See how it kind of starts giving you like a tapered highlight here, where it's broader up here, and this part down here is a little bit more intense and sharp. You can kind of do the same thing here. Larger brush to start with, and then you just keep kind of reducing it down. That side too. We've got this other cylinder cut out here. We've got our cube for a hand. That part might be, I don't know, like maybe 20%, just a smidge lighter, but not much. And then lasso our spheres. And you can actually, since they're not touching each other, I'm just gonna hit shift and lasso in this other sphere. Is our main light, right? Up and to the right. Like even this guy in the back here would get a little bit of that. Up and to the right. I'm gonna do this leg by itself. Like these two parts I'm gonna do as one. Sort of. Like one's gonna go kind of outward that angle, and then the other one's gonna go downward that angle. Maybe it kind of gets, you know, darker down the center there. Same thing here. Large sweeps. This is kind of ideally gonna be lit almost flat. Not as bright as the part that's pointing up like that. This one's kind of tricky, I gotta admit. I think it's still in the shadows. Because it's pointing that way, right? To the left, so let's just go maybe 20% and just swipe a little bit. Value-wise. Okay. So now we've got our main light, so let me just break it down into 3 separate layers. Main, one. So there's the main light layer. And that could be too bright. We can always come back later and lower the opacity on that a bit. Like that. And now I'm just going to come in and clip mask this and then go shadow. So for the shadow, I'm going to pick a value not black. It can't be like too dark. It's just got to be like, I don't know, like, yeah, above. Let's see how it feels. That's pretty good. Let's go 100%, see what it's like. Yeah, something like that. So let's go back and do the same thing again as before. Our sphere. And now we just need to do a swipe, like so. There's your shadows, right? And these are the kinds of things that you need to be keeping in mind when you're working on your simple volumes in terms of lighting. Wow, that was too broad. Let's see. Yeah, something like that. There's her shadow. You can kind of see it lines up with that bicep area there. And of course, this part of the fist. Swipe once. Let's do this neck next. And then we'll do that chest area. Just wanted to break this down very simply so that not only do you get what I'm saying when I talk about things like core shadow or main light or bounce light or fill light, that kind of terminology, but having painted it and also realizing that it's actually not that complicated, right? Trying to take something that has a lot of different variations to it and just breaking it down to like one set of variations currently. Because otherwise, my goodness, lighting is such a difficult topic just in and of itself, right? So right now we're just talking about how light can behave on a form, right? And later on we'll talk about yeah, what if this thing was lit under a different configuration? Yeah, definitely this part pointing down, get darker. Notice how I can be a little bit more loose anywhere outside here when I make the selection. I'm mainly concerned with the selection along here and on the inside here. And that's why doing this clipping mask will save you time, because then you don't have to be as worried about the outside bit as much as the inside bit. Wait, yeah, there's my selection. Yeah. And the reason why you want to make that selection is so that when you're making your stroke, all this gradient is done in this like very smooth fashion, as opposed to me going in there and trying to be tight around this area, because then you won't get this nice gradation. Or in order to get that nice gradation, you would have to like keep changing the value, and it's just so much work. It'd be so much easier just to make one very broad stroke with a large brush, right? Like this. And this should definitely continue down, right? Now we've got this other tapered cylinder, which is thigh away from us. There's a very famous fine artist who graduated from Cal State Fullerton named Mark Kostabi, and him and I had the same college professor. But anyways, that guy made so much money in his fine artwork just painting like basic geometric characters like this, you know, in oil. He would hire students actually to do the paintings for him. It was part of his fine arts, you know, what do you call it? You could call it methodology, you could call it a business, you could call it both. But anyways, I'm just saying that his characters are, in his paintings, kind of have this feel to it. And yeah, I do think this part would be slightly darker, probably very slightly, and then this part here would be even darker than that. Even though it's pointing up, make it darker just because it's facing the left side so much. Something like that. So you can kind of see what this is turned to, right? We've got our shadow layer now, and then now we got to paint in our little fill light. So we can make a new layer, call it fill. Now, here's something that you need to know. If you think about the sphere on this character as a planet Earth, right? Well, the part that the main light is hitting would be what? The sun, right? The sunlight that's hitting the Earth, and that would be daytime. You know, this area that's in the shadows here, that would be what? Nighttime. And then nighttime isn't completely pitch black. And the reason why is because we've got the moon. And the moon is basically our reflector for our fill light. Now, all the brightness that comes off of the moon at night is just bounced from the sun, which means what? It means that the fill light, the bounce light, will never be as bright as the main light. Okay? So it would be wrong if I were to just color pick this brightest point on my main light and paint in on the left hand side this fill, because then they would be competing against the main light. So the fill light needs to actually be darker, but not as dark as your core shadow. Okay? So that's kind of the characteristics I would be looking for on their fill light. Like even here, that may be a little bit too bright for a fill light, right? So let's start off by picking this, but then on this scale, let's go a little darker, and I'm just gonna paint in something first and see what that feels like. That feels still a little too bright. Maybe something like that. That feels a lot better to me. And again, maybe on the ones on the outside here, I'm not as afraid, so I'm just gonna paint those in, since you could see, because I'm painting in like a bit of a fill light here, that it kind of creates a core shadow right to the middle there. And basically this is just getting a little bit of bounce off of whatever is on this other side here. Would you get a little bit of bounce here? Yeah, you would. It would just kind of be a slight gradient off of that. And I'm using a smaller brush as well on my fill light, but yeah. Because I don't want it to be so broad that I lose that core shadow right there. I could come in and make all my selections, but I don't know, I'm pretty confident in my brush strokes here. Well, maybe not this one here. I spoke too soon. This one where I want like this nice hard edge. Like right there. Yeah. See, there's a nice fill, and then there's shadow. A lot of times what a lot of photographers do actually is they blow out all the, you know, lighting on the main part maybe, and then all the detail exists within the shadow area. All right, I need to actually make a good selection here in order for me to paint in my fill for this ribcage area. Like there. So you can see this is what we started with. Well, here, let's do this again. This is what we started with, and then this is the lighting. that will be applied to it. You can see the lighting scheme I've applied to it on my drawing here. I had it on the left. Did that on purpose just to show, like, there's a difference. But yeah, you can light it different direction. Okay, so the last bit that we're gonna do, and it's kind of, I mean, it might not be necessary for this one, but let's say, for example, that the background color was actually much darker. Let's go darker. Then, you could see how it starts blending in, right? Like we start losing the shadow side, even because our fill kind of kicks it up a bit. But a lot of times, what they'll do is they'll have that backlight, right? And that backlight is often, it's weird, but it's actually brighter than the main light sometimes. Depends on what effect you're going for, but you could actually get this main light and go even brighter with it. And just for the sake of contrast, I'm just going to put a slight blue tint to it too. And I'm going to come in and paint in this rim light. And what does that do? That really pops the shadow from the background. And a lot of times when they put in something like this rim light here, it's so that like the hair is really nicely lit. And a lot of times there's a directionality to it, or sometimes it's just above it as well, but it only kind of kisses just the edge, and that's oftentimes why it's called rim light or backlight. And you don't always see it. You'll maybe sometimes only, maybe it's focused on the top, and then on the bottom it's not so much, so you can kind of wear off its effect down here and only kind of focus it up here. But that's kind of fundamentals on portrait lighting, right? We called this one red. Like that. And that just kind of pops it out from that background. So you've got your fill, your main light, your core shadows, and all that's kind of derived from these simple spheres. And it's only after you know how light works on something like this that you can actually light this character, right? And so that's what this exercise is trying to show everyone. So for the homework assignment, you'll have two characters. You'll have your protagonist and maybe your antagonist. He's kind of cute for oh wait, he was going to be my protagonist, and then the space marine was going to be my antagonist, right? So I guess I painted the antagonist here. But yeah, you're going to have your protagonist and your antagonist. I want both of them kind of broken down into this like basic geometry mannequin level, and I want you to light it using a 3-point lighting setup, similar to what you're seeing here. Okay, it's and don't rush, don't just rush it. Just put some care into it, because this this is a very important lesson that will, for, like, if you get good at being able to paint something in its simplest form like this, you're going to be able to pretty much paint anything after that, right? Knowing how light falls on form. Okay. So yeah, I would want two, um, you know, simple mannequin lit with 3-point lighting setups. So I would do the same with this little dragon character. Um, and that's the homework assignment. The first one here, for color and light. Wait till we get into color, then there's a whole other stuff that we gotta learn. But right now, let's just focus on this light. Um, if I were to do anything else here, I guess the cast shadow is something I have not addressed yet. Um, very quick, very quick. Sorry, I totally missed it, but cast shadow. All right. So, the characteristics of the cast shadow. Notice how so far, with the exception of my cube forms, like things with corners, um, the cube forms have sort of a hard line, hard edge, delineating light from dark. Whereas something like your cast shadows uh, will also have a rather hard edge, but you could see how the shadows that are the core shadows here along the sphere, the cylinder, and the cone have a soft edge. A lot of times I will refer to those type of shadows as form shadows, things that the shadows that describe the form of the object. The cast shadow um, is basically, like for example, this neck, it will cast a shadow, the head will cast a shadow on that shoulder and that chest area, right? That cast shadow, I would actually have it start off being a hard edge, and then it will soften as it goes off into the away from the source of the shadow. So, say for example, right here, down here, it would be a much harder edge. Even though I'm using like a soft brush here, I want this, you see there, that cast to be hard up until a certain point, and then I'm going to come in and paint in the soft edge onto it like this, right? So it starts blurring out the further away from the source it goes. So say for example, if we had I don't know, I mean, a lot of this arm would actually get hit by a cast shadow, wouldn't it? Also, my cast shadow right now is like way too dark. Yeah, let's go a little lighter. There we go. I just lowered the opacity of the layer there. But yeah, say for example, if there's going to be a cast shadow on that arm, well, we wouldn't really see the edge. It would just darken everything here, right? So that's the cast shadow. And then this part we might get a little bit of an edge treatment. I'm just gonna make a simple shape like that. And so this is where you can get confused, right? You're like, well, why is there this big blob of shadow there? Well, it's because that's the cast shadow, but it's not the form of the thing, right? So it's casting a shadow on there, and we can just come back and erase out if we wanted to here. Same thing here with this block on the hand, and then this sphere of the helmet right there. Shadow. There's probably going to be a little bit over here where the cat shadow goes. And because that's so close, it'll just be a sharp edge. Over here, of course, then probably the cat shadow off of this. Yeah, something like that. I don't need to go too crazy with it yet, but yeah, there would probably be a cat shadow on its shoulder as well. Maybe not all of it, maybe just that part. And at this point, I'm just asking you to eyeball this in. And because it's further away, we can actually, let's get a soft brush here. Blur the actual. Okay. So there we go. And then, of course, the biggest cat shadow. What's the biggest cat shadow? It's the ground. And the light's coming from 3/4 front, so we get the shadows pointing 3/4 left on this character. Oh, I'm gonna have to put this under because it's a clipping mask into the character, and this cat shadow is actually on the ground, so I'm gonna have to make a new layer. And ooh, it's dark. Need to make a new layer, and then lower the opacity of that layer, and then maybe soften some of this stuff back here. Again, it's softened the further away it goes from, the source of the object that's casting the shadow. There you go. So there's just those little details there really sells it. Okay, cool. 3 pointy light setup. Give me main light, shadow, fill light, rim light, and cast shadow on these basic geometric figures. Okay, and if you don't have a character designed already, I would suggest you you may have to design a new character if you want to keep it your own IP. If otherwise, what I would maybe do is find an IP. Well, first off, you got to find an IP. I would suggest you find a public domain IP. Lucky for everyone, Steamboat Willie, which is the first Mickey Mouse cartoon, is now public domain as well. So more and more properties going forward into the future are going to become public domain. So I would search some of that if you don't have your own story IP that you want to work on yet. If you do, great. Pick 2 of the characters and do this exercise. All right. Well, thanks everyone.